KKVV Las Vegas.
The views, opinions, and conclusions expressed in the upcoming program are those of the participants and program owners and not necessarily those of Las Vegas Broadcasters Incorporated or its employees, management, or owners. The program you are about to hear has been pre-recorded for airing at this time. Please hold all phone calls. Once again, this is a pre-recorded program.
Hi there, KKVV listeners. This is Denise Mraz with another episode of Vegas Views, and we're just waiting on Jim Harrison, who's going to be calling in a few minutes from Natural Families. So as soon as he does, we'll put him on, but in the meantime, I just wanted to give you an update on what I just heard. We may be going to martial law here in Las Vegas in the next day or two. And we'll have to see what that looks like. But I'll tell you what, Governor Sisolak continues to disappoint and trample all over our constitutional rights. Yesterday, he issued an order to close natural health food stores. Now, we all know that a lot of people use natural health food stores. So what would be the premise for doing this? Well, there is none, except to hurt us. 2 weeks ago, he tried to close gun stores. Now, Sheriff Joe Lombardo wouldn't go along with that because he said, and his words were, "I'm pretty sure there's an NRS on that." Yes, there is. That gun stores need to stay open. But if Governor Sisolak knows that this is hurting us, why does he continue to do things that subvert our rights? Well, in a word, I'd love to hear from you on what you think about that. But in the meantime, I'm going to be introducing our caller, and this is Jim Harrison. He is with Natural Families, and as you know, part of the agenda of communism is to rip down the natural family. And when I say natural family, that is a husband and a wife with children of their natural genders. And let's just go into a little bit of why somebody is, changing genders. Why would they want their children's gender changed? We don't know, but hopefully Jim will be able to shed some light on that. And Jim, are you with me?
Yeah, I am.
Hi, Jim, all the way there in Columbus, Ohio. How you doing?
I'm blessed. I am absolutely blessed.
Well, thanks for joining me, and I'm so glad you called today. And I promised you I would tell you the story about an octopus. Do you want to hear my story?
Yes, I do.
Okay. In the natural world right now, in our oceans all across the planet, when a male octopus approaches a female octopus and she rebukes him, he rips off his male appendage and throws it at her. This is a totally true fact. Does that not shock you?
Yes.
But you know what? I listened to that story, and here's how I think of it. I think that the deep state, against everything that is God-given and our endowed rights, including the natural family, I see that as what deep state is doing right now. They're just like that male octopus. They don't know what to do. They are literally on their last leg, and everything they do is out of desperation.
I couldn't agree with you more. I sense that they feel like they're cornered. They've tried everything they can to get rid of Trump, impeachment. They have the news media totally on their side. He who controls the information controls the world. Yet, he's still standing. And they have thrown everything but the kitchen sink at this guy.
Yes. Well, tell me, here in Nevada, we have a governor who's closing natural health food stores. He's keeping Planned Parenthood open. They've allowed liquor to be delivered with food, but have closed small mom-and-pop liquor stores. What's going on in Ohio? Are you having some of the same issues?
Exactly the same thing. We're not supposed to be out driving around unless it's to a grocery store. We can't. Even the stores have to keep 6 feet distance from each other. So, yeah, it's the same draconian measures that you're experiencing there we're getting here.
Well, on the natural family and the assault, let me just give you a little background, folks, on Jim and I. I contacted Jim a few years ago when I was working with a candidate for office, and we started talking about the chemical transgendering of California. And I don't know, Jim, if you remember that show that we did together on that, but that you couldn't believe that this was going on.
Yep.
And I think that because we're all so isolated in our pockets of knowledge and information, that some of these things have just continued because a tolerance has been built in certain factions of society, and then it became a runaway train. But there's so many runaway trains that are assaulting the natural family. And you call your organization Natural Family Strong?
Yes, ma'am.
I think that's a great name. I love it. But what are you seeing, or how are you, I guess, in the fight?
Well, when you look at what is going on in America today, and by the way, the virus has stopped. I'm thinking especially about the homosexual sale in America, the LGBT sale. I'm going, what? I mean, this is incredible. I don't know what happens if this keeps going on, and just all kinds of nasty things happen. The thing they're doing with children in school. I mean, 5-year-olds can make a decision of what sex they want to be. 5 years old. They can't smoke, they can't drink, they can't vote, they can't drive a car, but they can make a decision in terms of what sex they want to be.
It's just sick.
It's insane. Mm-hmm. And then, boom, the curtain comes down with the virus. Mm-hmm. That's all. It's in pause mode. It hasn't stopped, but it's in pause mode. But it's good to see that.
It is good to see that. And, I think this was probably an important part of the reset. And I'll just kind of throw a little humdinger at you. Have you heard of Nasara or Jasara?
No.
Well, I won't go into it in this show, but we will next week. And what I've been reading on this is that for Trump, so Trump was actually not planning on doing everything he did at these deltas, but he took advantage of the COVID virus and the chaos to, for example, merge the Federal Reserve into the Treasury 2 weeks ago.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And then he's doing other things. And I'll just give you an example. Last night, every few days I look at whitehouse.gov news, and I saw that he had plainly said that the United States does not support and will not participate in the Moon Agreement, MOON. I'm like, the Moon Agreement? I've never even heard of the Moon Agreement. The Moon Agreement was I'll call it a United Nations-based agreement where the United States was going to give up their rights to use the minerals and possibly space travel rights to the moon. Now, why would the United States do that? They shouldn't. But I just come across these things, as the Moon Agreement. But anyway, the reason I mention it is that there's so many things happening right now. And going back to your comment on the reset and the pause, I love the fact that this has actually been a plus for the natural family because with the parents that I know, they're now seeing what their kids are learning in school. For one thing, one parent told me they can get all the lessons done in about 2 hours.
Uh-huh.
So what are they doing the other, I'll call it 6 hours, 7 hours? Indoctrinating, right? So there's the indoctrinating's ending, right?
Yep.
And then let's look at Common Core. A lot of the parents still did not realize that the Common Core math was so unproductive, so unreasonable, and completely no common sense at all to it. They've just told the teachers that they're not going to comply. I think it's great that it caused the parents to stand up. So,
amen.
Yeah,
Amen.
I mean, I see the reset and the pause working in some really good ways. And as this whole thing plays out, I mean, I don't think anyone could have prepared us for what the time we're living in right now, but I look at it as a Class A miracle.
You're right. Okay, it can be. Okay, I want to qualify what you're saying. It can be, and it's going to be up to us.
You are so right.
There's some kind of verse 7:14 somewhere in the Bible that talks about if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves. There's 4 requirements there, and we have to fulfill those. I think God has sent us a warning shot, but it's like you mentioned in Nevada, the abortion clinics are still open, and we want to make sure that the restaurants can still serve liquor. And I'm sure God's going down and going, hello. I don't think you're listening.
Well, okay, let's look at a premise. Anything that could be used for the good has been used for the bad. So we have to flip that script around. But the other thing is there's been so many agendas we've been lied about. Look at history. We've been totally lied to. I was raised Catholic. The Bible I used was not anywhere near the original Bible. I mean, the King James Bible in 1611 had how many books struck from it? 17 books. So you look at that, and when we start to understand the history of how we got here, it was a very mild and purposeful degradation from where we need to be. But so much so that like virtually nobody knows the truth, and there's so many, I'll call it academic arrogance, that feel that they are the truth, that they have all the answers. And I think we're finding out that things that we thought were settled science are not settled at all. I mean, it's kind of but I feel very calm and confident because I don't subscribe to any of those, I'll call it clubs. I'm kind of a simple person, and I look to what's going on around me, and then I draw my conclusions from some of that. I don't really listen to the news. I haven't really listened to mainstream news much in about 3 years. Are you still tied into mainstream news?
I have to take doses of it, but because like yourself, I have a radio program on Saturday mornings, and it's called Last Call. And I have to take notes of what the secular humanists are doing and point out to my audience, okay, here's what they're saying, and here's reality. So well, that's part of what I do as a show, though. So what do you think this week? So I'll just give you my latest. So I'm a research journalist, and I do look at snippets of things, but particularly I look at the people in conferences. So this last week, I've been focusing on the Service Employee Union, the SEIU. I found out that the SEIU is essentially an economic Antifa here in Nevada, and that they're the brown shirts, if you will, or the enforcement for revised statutes, codes, and laws that are creating kind of a fee-based enforcement system. So here in Nevada, if you grow a pepper plant or a tomato plant in your zero-scaped home, so if you're here and you sign a zero-scape contract, which means you're going to limit your water use and you're not going to have grass, in the small print it says that you won't grow food. So they have literally the tomato plant police that could come along at any time and fine you $200 a day for gardens or anything edible. Barney Fife with one bullet.
Yeah. See, so if you have a broken sprinkler, $200 a day. This was all part of the SEIU, what their job was. So we have that going on. I don't know if Ohio has something similar. They probably do. I haven't lived there since 2007, so some of my knowledge from there is kind of, I was just a person living on a 1 acre plot of land with a 3-bedroom house, and I wasn't in a planned community. But here in Las Vegas, we have so many homeowners associations, planned communities, walled communities, and I call them the clipboard cops. They'll come around and they'll give you a ticket for a pergola that's 2 inches over what your requirement can be. It can be pretty rough here sometimes. But going back to all this, I'll call it policing of each other. We've just kind of created this state of communism. It's just like, the Nazis all over again.
Yeah, it is. It looks an awful lot like that, to include the financial things that are happening. One thing I want to put a little plug in for what we're doing, and basically explain that in the world there are basically 3 institutions that control what's going to happen to you: the family, the state, and the church. I know the news media is out there, and I know there's other institutions out there, education, but those 3 entities control what's going to happen to you.
Now,
it used to be that. Go ahead.
Well, let's just take the church, for example. Now,
please.
What do you mean by church? Because the IRS has issued over 5,000 authorities contracts for what is basically 5,000 different religions. Yep. That's what they say. That's the number. Now, if there's more or less, it's still a huge number. And there's, of course, core religions, but there's all of these, I'll call it competing ideologies. And really, when I think of a church, I think of myself and protecting the God within. But I see it as my own responsibility. I don't think of it as a brick and mortar place, or, I think of it as something more spiritual, and my vigilant duty as a citizen in being in church, which is more of to me, a state of mind than a physical place. So when you say church, what do you say? What do you think it is?
It is what you said, but the Bible does encourage us to associate with other quote-unquote Christians. Now, it doesn't have to be in that building you're talking about. Matter of fact, that's become a real problem. But you are to associate with your fellow brothers and sisters.
Yeah, but
the Bible encourages that.
If you want a good argument, shouldn't you just ask a Christian what they think?
We're starting it already. we're making you're taking my quote and using it against me. I told you last time we talked is that if you ever want to start an argument, sincerely, if somebody paid you money to start an argument and you wanted to make sure you got paid for that, the first thing you need to do is find a Christian. And the rest will take care of itself.
So let's go back to the fact that there's 5,000 IRS designations. There's 320 million Americans. I mean, essentially, you could have 320 million churches, if you will, because everyone's going to have their opinion on what their reality is.
Well, you know what a denominator is, right?
Yes.
It's a divider. And what do we call ourselves?
Denominational, non-denominational. Yeah,
so,
the platforms.
But it's the one thing the Bible encourages unity, and I think that's one of the keys to this whole. Look, the Lord can unite us, and this virus is starting to do that. But He can really put the heat on and really unite us. I don't want to see that happen, Denise. I don't want to go there, because that's not going to be pretty. And we have to look at what's happening here. We've got to make the decision that we've been in the wrong. That's the church, that we've been allowing all these things to happen because we are in control, and we got to stop doing that. And on one of our shows, we talked about going back to normal. Well, I certainly don't want to go back to 3 or 4 weeks ago when we had in libraries we had gays having children sit on their laps and
the drag queen story hour.
Yeah, and I there's a senior center where I'm at, and the senior center had a 3-week class on the attributes of the LGBTQ community.
What?
Selling it. Oh yeah, senior center.
Well,
no stone unturned.
I think in speaking about that community. I know that there are some believers who feel that that is a positive or a negative. I guess I'm neutral because in my mind, we have to look at how this creation started. I mean, if you look at the chemical castration program of vaccines, they've moved a lot of testosterone-based male gender people that would have normally just grown up to be, I'll call it strapping young men, into a more neutralized, a metrosexual kind of, position. Because anybody that they could get away from a natural family position created a customer for their tribal thinking.
Great point. Great point. And by the way, when we talk about natural family, the term natural means something, and I have to use this term. Natural family is one biological born man. I have to say that now. And one biological born woman, a lifelong, committed, monogamous relationship with their biological and their adopted children. And we're talking about LGBTQ, but what about abortion? What about oppressive taxation, pornography, child, drugs, spousal abuse, feminism, attack on masculinity, public school indoctrination, socialism? It seems to me everything out there is purposely attacking the foundation of any nation, which is the family. You can't do it without the family.
Totally true. So
don't get me started.
How do you see this playing out in terms of, okay, so I'll give you a kind of a scenario. It appears that in Nevada that our schools are basically out for the summer. The kids are still in the lessons. They're still doing what they're supposed to, having their homework and their online schooling. But it's going to be ending around Memorial Day. And then it's done. And right now we're on spring break. So we don't have many more weeks of it, and there's talk of them just canceling brick and mortar school altogether. So I think it's kind of a good reset, because where do you see in the Constitution, now it's in our state Constitution that education needs to be state driven, but where is it in the federal Constitution that we owe anybody an education?
It isn't.
It's not in there. And so
but no, you can extrapolate the greater good, or whatever you want, whatever the phrase is in the Constitution. I'm not a constitutionalist, but you can interpret anything the way you want to.
You could. So I kind of see this as being sort of like a dry run for the fact that we're getting back to our constitutional republic. And that you do have a right to an education, but it's the education that you believe would best fit your, ideals, or how you perceive you want your child to go to skilled workforce, academic, training, whatever it is. I see it as a total reset for education, because Trump has essentially torn down the Department of Education. They've been turned into a bank loan company.
Yeah, that's a great point. Do you know who Sam Sorbo is?
No, who is that?
Sorbo is? Kevin Sorbo is an actor.
Kevin Sorbo. Oh, yes, I love Kevin Sorbo. He's fantastic.
His wife has a ministry. You'd have to go to Sam Sorbo, SORBO, samsorbo.com. We just had her on our program Saturday.
Oh.
And they have a homeschooling group, and she's out of Texas, but they're trying to do this nationwide. And it's called coronavirus homeschooling.
Oh.
And they're taking, this is almost a perfect storm. First of all, we've been drilled into our head that education is critical. You have to have education, especially children. Gotta have it.
Right.
So we spend billions of dollars on it. But the schools are shut down. Oh, my. And